Hello everyone. Okay, yada yada yada, complex games, Path of Exile.
Deep, dark fantasies.
As a person that played Path of Exile for 1800 hours, I still have no idea what I'm doing, but I feel qualified enough to talk to you about the game. Okay, so here's how it starts. You first make your character because the game is free and you want to try it, right? Of course. You select the flag in the middle and don't tick any other boxes because neither of us is ready for those. Spawn on the beach, kill a couple of zombies, hooray, you leveled up. Click on the plus button and holy shit, you just remembered you didn't want to play the game anymore. This is the casual filter. Wanna prove you're big-brained, be undaunted, and place all your points into damage. This won't have any repercussions whatsoever, no sir.
The best defense is offense. I'm only going to choose things that lead to victory for me. Damage, good. If enemy kill me, my damage not good enough. Make gooder. Make gooder damage. I've put literally nothing into defense or hit points. Look, the enemy can only kill you if they're alive. So my build is about making the enemy not alive. If the enemy is not alive, then my chance of death decreases.
So yeah, when I first played the game, I started getting one-shotted in Act 3 out of 10. I don't know what that was about.
I've put literally nothing into defense or hit points.
There were a couple of different things that I noticed when I first dipped my toes into the game. Why can a witch pick up a sword? That makes no sense. Why is a Templar using a bow? You see, I was coming in from playing an MMO thinking that this game had no rhyme or reason. It still doesn't. A warrior with fireballs? That's preposterous.
Wait, how does that work?
It doesn't.
Okay, let's get you acquainted with character builds. There's no way that after being a real gamer, clicking play and then skipping all the tutorials, you have any idea what the fuck is going on. So here's the deal. Try getting some life or energy shield and some armor or evasion from your skill tree whenever it is convenient. This is a game where you fight 30 monsters at once in a tight space. You are getting hit and dying, it's just a matter of force. I don't care what you played before, but you're not getting away with no defense. Oh, you play Toho? Okay, maybe you have a chance, but I don't know, I doubt one of those three people are still here to play Path of Exile. Next up on the agenda is damage.
Make gooder damage.
Of course you want to scale damage from your skill tree, but may I suggest at least looking up the gems on the wiki before you do that? No, you don't want to browse like 300 gems and choose which one will be your partner for the rest of your playthrough? I know you want to use all the skills, but that's not gonna happen. Many people clear the game with only one skill doing the damage, at most two, and those builds are rare, and if they could, they would drop the damage to make one of them work automatically, so they only had one skill. As a one skill player, I can tell people right now that I don't have enough buttons anyway for all of the buffs that I'm using to empower my attack. So trust me, what I'm trying to say is make sure that you know which skill you want to be using, because there is no point in scaling like 3 of them equally. That's just a bad time, that's not going to work. But how do the gems work? Well, I'm glad you asked. So each gem can be linked to any other gem providing there's a link on the armor. This armor is what people call a 6-link. And it's the best type because anyone could tell you having your main skill amplified by 5 other different effects is absolutely broken. For example, you can use the fire arrow skill to shoot 4 arrows instead of 1, which will bounce on each enemy and then insert 3 other effects at the end of this sentence. Essentially, this game is a comically large Lego set. You're given a sack of potatoes filled with large Lego bricks, and it's up to you to figure out what the hell you want to do with those. The only issue is that you're linked to the limited amount of bricks you can use and the knowledge you have about building your character. Case in point, the skill tree is so big because all of the classes share it. You could theoretically become a magical warrior, but the point is that it's much easier to get magic damage if you're a witch. You know, everyone can do anything as long as they want to, just like in real life, but some of us are born with a small loan of $1 million from their parents. Hopefully, you didn't die too much. But if you did, I am here to tell you that those elemental resistances better be at 75%. You might think that's a bit overkill. No dude, that's just the baseline. The devs consider 75% defense as the baseline when doing damage calculations. Let's do some simple maths to show how ridiculous this can get. This is the Shaper. The Shaper is an endgame boss. The Shaper also shoots a laser beam. I will approximate the numbers so that we get nice results. The beam does about 5400 fire damage a second, 44,000 cold damage a second, and 6,000 lightning damage a second, which means at 75% defense you will get damage for 1350 fire damage a second, 1100 cold damage a second, and 1500 lightning damage a second, which means you need to have more than 3950 life to tank the beam for 1 second and then be able to regenerate all of that life in 1 second. So, what this all basically means is that if the beam hits you, you're mostly fucked and there's no amount of power in this universe to get you back from where that beam will send you. That was a bit of an extreme example, but please do not let me discourage you. I'm just filtering out the people who didn't want to play the game to begin with. Now that you've got a grasp on skills and the passive tree and hopefully getting gear that is, according to your stats, quote-unquote good, let's consider that after a generous 30 hours, you might have finished the campaign for the first time. If you're looking up guides, you could finish it faster and have less of a headache, but all of us here are built different, so I know for a fact you're not doing that. But now what do we do? Well, welcome to the Path of Exile Endgame, or in other words, the actual game because you just managed to finish the tutorial. Getting gear is always the way to go. To that I say, get lucky and drop all of the things that you need. Or, just craft them. To craft in this game you need a PhD, but I'm willing to sum up a bit for you even if you'll probably hardly get it. Each piece of gear has these stats on them. The bigger the stats, the better the gear. Bigger number, better person. To get bigger rolls, the stats need to be of a higher tier, up to tier 1. The stats are separated into halves, prefixes and suffixes. And they don't share rolls, so a prefix stat may never appear as a suffix stat. Also, you cannot get duplicates of the same exact stat. So, if you have a plus life, you cannot get another plus life. However, if the scaling is different, you may get a plus life and then a percentage life increase. But how do we craft these modifiers? With currency. See those orbs that you've picked off the ground? Those are money. Our real-world economy is based around the availability and crafting potential of each orb. Essentially, each orb has its own unpredictable, or rather slightly predictable way of modifying your gear. So, the average Path of Exile player is basically a monkey banging rocks on top of their armor until the armor takes the shape that they want. This is an Orb of Transmutation. It makes an item blue and it also gives that item some random stats. This orb is mostly trash and it is very cheap. This is a Chaos Orb. It reforges a yellow item randomly, turning it from a trash yellow item to another random trash yellow item. But it has its uses. This orb is $1. Everyone and their mother is using this as the main fiat currency of the trading scene. This is the Divine Orb, and it is the $100 to $300 bill, depending on how many people are hoarding it. Why it's so expensive? Well, it's because most useful crafting recipes require it. Okay, now we're going to go a bit more in depth than we should, but I will explain what I learned really fast. Please enjoy this additional footage for your comfort. So first of all, you want to go on the PoE real wiki and search for the piece of gear that would best suit your character's attack or defense. Then look up that piece of armor on the trade website and make sure that it has a fractured modifier that you want. Yes, you heard me correctly, the trade website. Buckle up and get your third-party tools ready because there is no auction house in this game. The fractured modifier that I specified earlier does not change when you're hitting currency on the item. So you have one modifier be something that you want at all times. Then you use an essence on it because essences have one guaranteed modifier, which means you have two modifiers that are exactly what you want. I'll now attempt to go even further beyond, so here's more footage for your entertainment. Now, with essences, you may spam the item to get either 3 prefixes you like or 3 suffixes you like. Alternatively, you can get 2 suffixes and 1 prefix. You may now craft on the item the suffix start quote can have up to 3 crafted modifiers end quote. Then you may craft the last 2 prefixes and have a pretty good item. If you want to go big or go home, you need to get 3 prefixes or suffixes. Then you can craft on the item either prefixes cannot be changed or suffixes cannot be changed. What if there is a modifier other than those 3 that you're locking in that you don't want? Well, in that situation, people go and kill Aisling from the Immortal Syndicate because she can take 1 random modifier and turn it into a veiled one. If you're unlucky, it may remove your craft, which means you need to craft it again. If you're really unlucky, it may remove the other mod that you liked that was right next to it. The modifier can later be unveiled for very good bonuses. The idea is that you get a choice out of 3 when unveiling. If you're lazy like me, instead of killing Aisling or interacting with people that will do it for you, you just use a Veiled Chaos Orb and hope the modifiers aren't bad. Then, if you've got space before unveiling, you can craft something that you don't want to unveil to lock it out of the drop pool. Then, you can unveil, and then at last you craft the last modifier on the item. Great success! You may now have an almost perfect item or a decently average one. Now that you've gotten to the maps, you may encounter the skill tree. What do you mean? I already did, you might say. Well, in Path of Exile we have this skill tree, not to be confused with that skill tree. Be not afraid, you've done this once before. This one is much more open-ended, as it allows you to essentially specialize into a type of content that you'd like to farm. You like tower defense? Pick Blight. Would you like to gamble and maybe learn even more crafting on the side? Harvest has you covered. Maybe you like to go deep into the depths of the earth where no one can see you. Then look no further and go delving. The world is your oyster. You want it, the game has it. But what are these things that I keep avoiding, like that hole in the ground that I sometimes walk past? That is the current league mechanic. Every side content ever was once a league mechanic, and this one's no different. Here's the issue with it. The monsters inside are cracked. This has always been true for every league mechanic ever since the dawn of time. The monsters before, cracked. The ones after, cracked. And suppose you manage to kill the monsters in the current league mechanic. Well, good on you, but you know how the monsters in the map will become after you exit the current league mechanic? Well, take a gander at this one and you tell me.
That's quite big.
Dying by your own greediness is the name of the game. After all, we are all playing a giant loot box simulator waiting for the game to roll 777 and deliver us the items that we always wished for. If you die by being too greedy at any point, I recommend you a classical drink called Oops, I Did It Again. After that, some would question if the risk was worth it. The rest were already dead. There are so many pastime activities to do here that you couldn't possibly get bored. Try every one of them and see what's good for you. And then, once you've had your fun, you can try making a new character with all of the knowledge that you've acquired. After all, this is Path of Exile. This is Path of Exile, and if you can take a guess, this is Path of Exile as well. There is much fun to be had and more loot to be looted, and the more friends you have, the more the loot will drop. So maybe, after all, the Path of Exile was the friends we made along the way.